and welcome to the last day in our seminar series 2022. I have to hear a big "oh" there. So this session is a year in the therapy garden with Badenoch Strathspey Therapy Garden, and they are based in Highland, Scotland. So it'll be very, very interesting to hear what they've been getting up to there. Just a quick introduction to Trellis. For those of you who don't know us, Trellis is the charity that supports therapeutic gardening in Scotland. We provide information, training and good practice sharing, and we aim to promote the highest quality therapeutic gardening services and enable everyone to get the best out of them. We encourage garden groups to share their experiences and skills and resources through a network of over 480 gardening groups. And you can find links to all this and information and resources online at the Trellis homepage. So a quick summary of this session this morning. There's going to be a presentation of approximately 50 minutes, and that's going to be followed by an opportunity to ask questions and have discussion. So you can use the chat feature throughout the session to ask questions, and one of our team, I think it's Joan today, is going to voice the questions to the presenter in the Q&A session at the end. Or while we're in the Q&A session, please feel free to use your reaction button at the bottom of the screen, press that to raise your hand, find the raise your hand, and we'll ask you to unmute and voice your question in the session. We've got closed captions or a live audio transcription available, and at the bottom of your screen you'll see a box that says CC, or if you don't see that, if you move along to the three little dots that says more, if you click on there, you get the option to turn on your live audio transcription and show subtitles if that's useful to you. Feedback. Near the close of the session, we're going to ask you for some feedback. We'll put a link in the chat and that takes you to a short survey. It's really important for us to get your feedback, and we really welcome it. It tailors what we can provide to you. If you miss the link in the chat, there will be a follow-up email and you'll get a chance to click on the link there. So thanks very much. That's all my housekeeping. So it's a delight to welcome Jen Barrett, who's going to share her experiences and work of the garden. And Jen is the project manager with Badenoch Strathspey Therapy Garden. She began working in the garden in March 2021. She has a background in environmental science and has been an enthusiastic gardener for many years, supporting school gardens and working her own large garden and polytunnel in Badenoch. Over the last few years, Jen has worked with people with disabilities and completed the Trellis online seasonal training modules to extend her knowledge. She has had a fun-filled year leading the therapeutic gardening sessions at the growing spaces in Kingussie, and also providing tabletop gardening sessions for older people in various locations. And this year she's developing a therapy garden at the new hospital in Aviemore. So I'll pass you over to Jen. Jen, hello. Just going to spotlight you here so that everyone can see you. There you go.
Hi there, everybody. I will just share my screen and then I can make a start on the presentation. Okay. There we are. Okay.
That's lovely.
Is that okay? Everybody can see that?
It is.
And you can hear me okay. So yes, I've only been in post a year, so it really is my first year in the therapy garden, and it's been a very exciting one. But the idea of today's presentation is really just to give you a feel for what it's like working in a project like this, the different trials and wonderful things that happen over the year. So it's not going to be sort of simply going through January, February, March. I'm going to have lots of different bits of information dotted throughout the year. And really, I've just based it on some photographs that we've got of our the wonderful people that use and help in our gardens. So hopefully that will keep you entertained as we go through the talk. So yes, we're based in Aviemore and Kingussie, and this is part of in the national park area, about 40 miles south of Inverness. I thought I'd better put us on the map just in case we've got people from around the world. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if everybody's from Scotland. And the project started off, I think, just over 10 years ago as the St Vincent's Therapy Garden at the local hospital. And that was very much based at the hospital, but with a view to local people and clients getting involved as well. So although staff and maybe patients could enjoy it, it wasn't just for them. More recently, in the recent years, the work's extended greatly into the allotment in Kingussie, a small garden at the medical practice in Aviemore, and outreach work with care homes and a daycare centre in the area as well. So the presentation today will introduce you to the work of a small rural charity in Highland, rural Scotland, through a typical year, and to give you a flavour of the positive impact social and horticultural therapy can have in the community. I'm actually the only person that actually gets paid for my work, so everybody else involved is a volunteer. And I'll also bring you up to date on our most recent addition, which is the garden at the new hospital in Aviemore, and a new project that we're undertaking this year, just starting in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Not...
Give it a little click in the black space. Is it moving for you?
Oh, there we are. Thank you. So starting off with spring in the allotment. Well, I'm sure you know spring in the Highlands is a movable feast. Last year, which was my first year, I started work in April, and spring really didn't arrive until well into May. It was a very long, cold winter. This winter hasn't been as cold. We've already got bulbs appearing and signs of spring. We're actually at an altitude of over 700 feet. So we've got a short growing season, lots of wind and rain, and we can have long cold winters with long periods of freezing temperatures. And we're also, quite far inland. So in the summer, we can actually get those baking sort of temperatures and get quite hot summers. So I think unpredictable is really how you would sum up our climate in terms of gardening. So the allotment that we have in Kingussie, we have two allotments there in partnership with a local charity called Composting Horizons, and they support adults with learning with additional support needs. We've all had to change the way we work since COVID, and obviously I was starting the work at the end of the COVID restrictions, really. So in the past, large groups of 10 or 12 people have come to the garden at one time, but last year we were working in much smaller groups of 2 or 3. And I've just got one person in the picture here showing harvesting, which maybe you wouldn't think of as a springtime activity, but when we've got some overwintering crops like leeks, we have the rhubarb there in the spring as well. And harvesting is always such a popular activity. People really enjoy reaping the benefits of the work that's gone before. So we've got quite a mixture of people in the garden, along with our volunteers and the people that are being supported by us. Some of them have been coming for many years and really don't need much instruction at all. They kind of know what they're doing. They just need a reminder and maybe a check to make sure that they're happy with what they're doing. But others really do need a lot of support. They need to be shown what to do, and they need constant guidance just to make sure that they're on the right track. So we have, as well as myself, we have a number of volunteers who volunteer for the gardens, and then the support workers also maybe come along with the people from Composting Horizons. Everyone who takes part in our activities, that's whether you're a volunteer, a client if you like, or if you're a member of staff like myself, pays an annual membership of £3. And that really is to make sure that everybody is the same And when it comes to harvesting time and we've got fruit or flowers or whatever for people to take away, everybody can take some, feeling quite confident that they've paid their little bit and they're entitled to take something. And another thing that sort of paperwork exercise that we have to go through is making sure that we have permission to take people's photographs and to share them in things like this. So that's an important part of a project like ours. Okay, so down at the allotment we have plenty of space for storage. We've got a couple of sheds, and also because it's an official allotment site, it's fully fenced off, it's gated, it's padlocked, just for the security of the whole site. So, you know, that has benefits in one way, but in another way, it does make it more difficult for people just to pop in whenever they want. And maybe we would want somebody just to be able to go and water plants at the weekend. That makes it a little bit more difficult for that sort of thing. Some things such as chitting potatoes that you can see there, sowing seeds in warmth, then we have to either do it at home, you know, or maybe do it there and take seed trays home, because we don't have any greenhouse or any power or anything down at the allotment. Here you can see one of the gardeners sowing seeds, pea seeds, into a piece of guttering, and this was one of the things that we did to try and avoid the mouse attacks that can sometimes decimate your pea crop before you've even started. In addition to vegetable beds and flowers, we also have perennial beds. As you can see, the little narcissi there, and it's great having some beds which are planted up with perennials, bulbs, things that will give all year round interest. And there's a little seating area there as well. And it's just nice to know that there's always something in colour, in bloom, and people can come and sit down and just enjoy being in the garden, really at any time of year. And we always like to say we don't make everybody work when they come down, they actually can enjoy it as well. And just to give you an idea of the way we actually operate the garden, we try to be organic, and we rotate the crops around the raised beds to minimise disease and to sort of improve soil nutrient. And we also do quite a bit of composting, which is something that I'm really keen on. We've got the wooden composters and the sort of plastic Dalek type as well. And surprisingly, even though we have a short growing season, we do actually manage to produce pretty good compost. You know, just if you give it enough time, it's okay. As you can see in the photos there, we've got a couple of cloches, and these can be used to protect crops at the beginning of the season, or for bringing on seedlings early on. Here they were protecting some courgette plants that we'd put into the beds. We also use canes and plastic mesh for growing peas and beans, and the old favourite, the CDs there, dangling to hopefully deter some of the pigeons, because they can absolutely destroy things like the peas as they're growing. And this is one of the things that's great, getting everybody involved in protecting the crops, understanding, you know, how nature works with, you know, with the things that we're growing as well. So on one hand, we're trying to encourage nature, and another, pigeons are one thing that we would prefer not to encourage. On the right hand side, in the background there, you can see one of our popper domes, which have been absolutely brilliant. So these are little domes with mesh. They go up just like a little tent with flexible poles and peg into the ground, and they provide protection for things like the brassicas, the greens, anything that the pigeons might be after. And they really did work well. They've also got zips up the side, so you can easily get in to do a bit of weeding and zip it back up again. Unfortunately, I was a little bit eager to remove them last season, so over the winter the broccoli and the kale did suffer, I'm afraid, from the pigeons. And actually in the background there, you can also see one of the fruit cages. So we've got two really big fruit cages with 4 raised beds in each. And actually the Highlands is a good area for growing things like strawberries, raspberries, and other fruit, blackcurrants, blueberries. And if without the fruit cages, the birds would just eat everything. So it's great to be able to grow things and have some confidence that we're actually going to get a crop from them. And we have some dedicated and tall volunteers who put the mesh roof on in the in the spring, and take it off at the end of the season in the autumn, so that the snow doesn't damage it. But things like that, which are expensive, but they do make a huge difference really to your confidence really in the plot going through the year. And as you can see, we had a summer last year. We had some great weather. And one of the big things that we did last year was run a series of 4 open days. And we really were so lucky with the weather. It was dry every time, and we had some scorching days, which just makes all the difference when you've got people milling about and chatting and enjoying it. We had funding from an NHS Think Health, Think Nature fund. And this is a local initiative which supports local groups who undertake outdoor and green activities which benefit mental and physical health in the local community. So we fit really well within that group. And I would say that for many years, the therapy gardens have tried to build partnerships with local doctor surgeries and other people who are working in the area who might identify individuals that would benefit from coming to the garden. But it is always, you know, it's so difficult trying to make those connections and maintain them and keep the communication going. So we're really hopeful that this Green Health initiative will help to strengthen the links and bring more people into the garden. Some of the groups that came along to the open days included a visually impaired group, and you can see them in the corner there having a laugh, and their refreshments. I think they'd been handed some cucumbers, and they were having a little giggle about those while they were sitting there. But actually, for one of these people, it was the first time they'd been out, you know, since the COVID restrictions had come in. And it was the confidence of being able to come to an outdoor space with some people that they knew and knowing that it was going to be safe that really helped them come out. And since then, they've, you know, gained a bit more confidence. So it really felt quite important what we were doing last year. And also we had other people who were isolated, who met up with old friends and subsequently went on to meet, you know, at home as well, which I think was really the whole idea of the open days. It wasn't just about getting people into the garden, it was making those connections and seeing people develop. A lot of work has been done over the years to make the allotment site easy to maintain and accessible for wheelchairs. And as you can see there, the slabbed areas with a nice seating area, you know, gives us a nice sheltered place to meet and to do activities, and for wheelchairs to feel part of the wheelchair users to feel part of the, you know, activities. And you might be able to see under the orange umbrella there, there's what's called a manger bed, and we have a couple of these at the Kingussie site. And they're designed specifically so that the wheelchair users can be doing exactly the same activities, planting their own seeds, maintaining, weeding, harvesting in a bed that's at the correct height. So those have been really, really successful. In addition to the allotments down in Kingussie, for a number of years, we've had a very small garden behind the medical practice in Aviemore, and that consists of about 4 or 5 raised beds and a large rockery. And it's a different group that maintain that garden, and they come along with support workers. And actually the sessions had to be in the evening because the doctor's surgery was obviously working, so it was a bit too noisy if we were there during the day, so we were had an evening session there. But as this in 2021, we knew that we'd be moving to the new hospital. We took the opportunity to start growing some things that we would be able to take with us to the new garden. So here you can see a herb bed on the left-hand side, where we started bringing on some plants that we would be able to take with us. I felt it was really nice that we had a bit of continuity from one place to the other, and that right from the start, the people that were coming to the garden would feel some ownership of the new site. And on the right there, you can see one of our very committed gardeners who's got lots of experience now, and she actually has had her own little bed there, chooses what she wants to plant, looks after it herself, harvests it herself. And that's a little bit different to what we do most of the time, which is very communal. But it's nice to be able to give the opportunity for people to do their own thing if that's what they want, and we can support them to do that. And to the right hand side of the right hand photo, you can see a lovely wildflower plot, which is actually our neighbour's plot, which is owned by the Allotment Association. And so we're quite lucky. This is a plot that's too wet to for anybody to use it as an allotment. So we're bordered on one side by these beautiful wildflowers, and then the other side we've got a traditional allotment. And it's just nice to have neighbours that, one side we've got the pollinators and all the insects and everything, and on the other side we've got wonderful other allotment holders with lots of experience, tips and advice, and sharing things just like you do in any allotment. And they do it with everybody that's there, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's somebody that's coming along as a garden user. They just feel part of it, which is really nice. But of course, it's not all, fun and positivity. Here we can see on the left-hand picture, you can see that there's a couple of people who are not enjoying what they're doing. And these guys really hate weeding. And it's just one of those jobs they really, really hate. And doing it there with somebody that they know and they get on with. But I just took this picture because it just summed up that time when you've been asked to do something you really don't want to do. And what I would say about, our project is, sometimes it's good to do something you don't want to do. We know that's a good life skill, but sometimes you have to think about, why is it that the person isn't enjoying that job? Is it because they actually can't do it? There's a medical reason why they find it difficult. They might find making decisions hard, making a distinction between different plants, what's a weed, what's not a weed. And luckily we have got some guys who love weeding. They just get down on their knees, have a little bit of chat, they feel they know what they're doing, and they're happy with that. So what I would say is, we don't force anybody to do anything that's going to make them miserable. Have a little go, but generally we can find something that suits everybody. And in the middle there you can see some very happy people who used the strawberries that we'd been growing to make jam. So we had a couple of sessions making leek soup at the beginning of the year, and then making jam with the strawberries, and that has been really popular, and actually is something that group have taken on further after our activities there. But that was really good, and we actually used the jam at one of the open days as well, which was nice. And at the bottom there you can see one of our blackboards. We made these blackboards just as a way of helping to give some guidance at the beginning for both the garden users and the volunteers. What were we going to do today? But then also it gives us a little way of doing an evaluation at the end. People can put their smiley faces or ticks, or they can write up if they want, how did they find that task? And it's an easy way of keeping a record of how people are getting on without filling out lots of forms and that sort of thing. And an added bonus has been, actually some of the people who use the garden are really wanting to write on the board, which isn't actually something that they do very often, and they help each other out. So it's been a bit of an eye-opener, really, that something that started off as a way of evaluating actually became another little skill as well. Obviously at the end of the summer, or through the summer and towards the end of the summer, you've got a lot of things going on. You've got your harvesting really coming to a peak, and also you can have a lot of weeding, trying to keep on top of everything. And it's easy for the garden to kind of dictate what needs to be done, so that you're just coming in and doing jobs. And so we do always try and make sure that we are learning new skills and making sure that people are developing their gardening skills as well. So here you can see us doing a bit of propagating. We took some cuttings of plants from the old gardens to take to the new garden. We also propagated lots of strawberry plants. I think we did about 80 baby strawberry plants to rejuvenate our existing beds, provide more for Aviemore, and possibly to sell in the future as well. And so that's an important part of what we do, trying to make sure we incorporate some skills. And on the right there, you can see a lovely custard white courgette. And that was our only courgette last year, which was a bit of a disappointment. It was good fun growing it, but I think next year we're going to go back to the traditional green courgette and see if we have a bit more success with that, because that one was a lot of work for just one poor little courgette. And other sort of successes and failures that we had last year, I mean, every year is going to be different, but last year we had wonderful cosmos, wonderful sunflowers, kale and turnips were all great, but the sweet corn failed and sweet peas were very disappointing. So that's something we'll try again this year and see how we get on. Another nice picture in the summer weather, cleaning pots at the end of the year. So this was a nice communal activity. Some of them were in fancy dress, I think, which often happens because they come from, they work part of the time in the charity shop. So sometimes we get some interesting outfits, but it all, you know, it all contributes to the fun. And this was a really good job to do to kind of prepare for next year. The big black pots that you see there are actually given to us by the co-op. They're the ones they use for their cut flowers. And we use them as little trugs for collecting weeds or for planting things up. We can put drainage holes in them as well. So it's nice. We do, you know, obviously a lot of reusing and recycling type things as part of our gardening, just like most gardeners do. Also, you can see there we've got a hose pipe and tap at the allotment. So it's really well set up. You know, just to help us maintain everything. At the moment, we're probably standing in water at the allotment. It can be very, very wet, and it's really hard at this time of year to believe that in the summer we have to have a rota for watering just to keep everything alive. It's, you know, things just change so fast. As I've said already, we have plenty of produce, you know, that we're growing and sharing throughout the year, the fruits, the beans. Here you can see in the middle at the bottom, it was some produce that we took along to Cabernet Horizons for them to make available in their shop. So we had rhubarb and we had some little chive plants that we'd propagated and potted up. Because we're part of an allotment, we're not allowed to sell produce, but we are allowed to make it available for people to give a donation. And so that's something that we probably can work on a little bit more this year to, you know, hopefully get more donations and increase awareness of what we're doing. But obviously, first and foremost, people take produce home to cook and use at home if they can. But if we have an excess, then we can make the jam, we can make the soup, and we can get donations for it as well. So autumn, moving on to the next season, typically your season for harvesting, tidying, dividing plants and sort of thinking about the next year. We do like to have a chat about what worked and what didn't and start to plan for the following growing season. But last year, obviously, we had the excitement of a whole new garden to move into. So the new Aviemore Community Hospital replaces 2 old hospitals and also the medical practice. And that's where we had our little garden for a few years. And it's also brought together all of the NHS services, including social work, community nursing and physiotherapy. Our garden can actually be seen through the windows by anybody walking through the hospital and from the waiting area. So we're quite hopeful that as time goes on and we're actually in the garden more, we might get more referrals because staff will be seeing what we're doing on a daily basis, and they will be a little bit more in their minds if they're thinking about, oh, looking for an opportunity for somebody to get outside and do things with other people, that sort of thing. So it can only be positive, I think, being in such a public place. Also, there's a walking route going around the hospital. So we've, even the few times that we've been up there already, we are getting stopped by members of the public and patients, visitors, asking what we're doing. So I think awareness of our work is definitely going to increase at the Aviemore Hospital. The first picture shows us working in the evening last year when we were trying to move some of the plants from the old sites. So actually some of the azaleas and rhododendrons came from the original St Vincent's Hospital garden. And it's been great to bring those along with us. It gives us a little bit of height and structure to the plot, but it also gives that bit of continuity as well, and, you know, remembers where we started. So that was nice. And of course, we've got lighting at the hospital, so we can work in the evening if that's when suits people best. You can also see the bottom right, two of the gardeners showing off the new herb bed. So this is where they transplanted the plants that they've been bringing on from the previous medical practice. So again, it's a bit of continuity, but it got us off to a good start with some beds that have actually, you know, we managed to fill straight away. You can see a nice big shed there, which was part of the arrangement. We've got, and compost bins. So it's great. We've got new tools, which we're gradually filling the shed with. We've also got a bit of working space in there. So it's going to be a really good setup for the future to garden in. Next to the shed, we did have a greenhouse for a couple of months, but I'm afraid Storm Eunice decided that we didn't need a greenhouse anymore and took it away. So we were left with just a lot of broken glass. So we're going to have to think about what we're going to replace that with, because it's a very windy site, and we need to try and make sure it's a bit more sheltered, just to make it a bit more pleasant to work in, but also to make it a bit safer for things like that. And these are some pictures from the new hospital garden right at the beginning, when the beds had just been put in. I think they hadn't even put the trellis in some of these photos. So this was at an early stage, but it was great. This was all done as part of the arrangement with the hospital as the new hospital was getting built. And as you can see, it's all raised beds. We've got the manger beds again, so that we can have wheelchair users gardening with us as well quite easily. And it's all flat and very, very wheelchair friendly and mobility friendly. So that is going to be a real bonus, I think, for us working in this area. And it's big as well, so there's going to be plenty of space for us to have seating, tables and that sort of thing. And I think another difference between this and our plots that we have down in Kingussie is that this is a very public space. So whereas Kingussie is an allotment and we're just with all the other allotments, so you expect it to be quite functional and seasonal, this is going to be on show all year round. So we are going to have to give some thought to making sure that it's attractive all year round, that there's something of interest, and that, you know, we don't just kind of clear it out at the end of the season and wait for next year. So it's a little bit more of a garden rather than it being productive like the allotment. But I think that's all part of the learning process for us, and it gives us different ways to garden in the different places. And we will have to look for more volunteers as well for this particular garden, because we haven't had so much gardening going on in the past. So Aviemore is going to be an area where we will be looking for more volunteers. Obviously, another advantage in Aviemore is that because it's open all the time, people will be able to pop in, do a bit of watering, do a bit of weeding whenever they want. It won't ever be locked. Moving on to the autumn, and I put these photos in because I thought they just summed up the joy of what we do. You know, in the middle there, you can see one of our gardeners with one of the volunteers from Cabernet Horizon, just having a brilliant laugh, just really enjoying themselves. And what we were doing, we were refreshing some barrel containers outside the Cabernet Horizons. They had been full of summer planting, and so we were just going to put winter shrubs in and some bulbs and things, so that it would be okay for over the winter and into the spring. And everybody got involved in making choices about what they wanted to put in, and it was, you know, it was a really nice activity to do and good fun. And on the left you can see somebody putting in bulbs into one of the beds in Kingussie, and those are actually showing through now. Again, we were thinking about, could we do something where we would have produce that we could make available for donations or donate to somebody. So that was one of the decisions we made, was to put some bulbs in so that they can pick them later. And on the right there, you can see one of our gardeners who spent 2 weeks, 2 different sessions, tussling with a massive gooseberry plant that was in the wrong place. And this was one where we had to use different tools. So he was actually using a pruning saw for part of this, you know, with a lot of guidance and instruction. And I just wanted to mention that because health and safety is obviously something that we do have to think about really all the time, you know, doing a normal risk assessment, but then adding in each individual's abilities, their understanding, and how much supervision they need. So I think that's an important part of gardening with a whole variety of different groups like this. So he was very proud when that came out, and you know, again, showed determination to keep going with a task as well. Most of the tools that we use are just regular tools. You know, we do have some long handle tools and lots of really great kneelers that help you get down and back up again, but much of the equipment that we're using is pretty standard. I'm moving on really to a winter activities, but also things that we do all year round as well, is the tabletop gardening. So this is where we go into a couple of care homes, residential care homes, and also a daycare centre. Now, last year was obviously very different because of COVID. There were lots of restrictions. It took a little while to get going. And for us to be able to go in and work with residents again. So we started off actually with the project in a poke idea, which Trellis provided for us. So we used that idea so that we could actually start off just taking in an activity, giving it to the staff for them to do with individuals if they were keen. And then from that, we then developed to going in, you know, on a weekly or fortnightly basis, just to work with usually 1 or 2 people. And although it's been difficult because of the COVID restrictions and all the testing and everything that we have to do, and you know, suddenly somewhere's closed because they've got cases, it has been really worthwhile because there has been such a lack of stimulation for people when they haven't had visitors. So I think although it's been difficult, it has been very, very well received, and you know, it's been a real joy actually to do that. And now that the daycare centres are starting to have more and more people coming in as well, hopefully we will gradually develop more of the tabletop gardening so that we're working with bigger groups as well, because that's a big part of it, rather than just being in 2s and 3s. If you've got more people, then you get the social interactions as well. So some of the things here you can see that we've done, planting seeds for windowsill growing, and then they can go outside, planting bulbs ready for the spring, and we use some of our own lavender to make little lavender bags. We've also used our own flowers to do little flower arrangements, and spider plants, planting up baby spider plants as well. So lots of different activities and a few craft activities as well, which has been, you know, really enjoyable and beneficial. And this was an activity that we did in the winter with one of the groups actually that had connected with us at the open day, which is Befrienders. And so people who are a little bit isolated are allocated a befriender and do different activities with them. And the organizer of that group asked us if we could do an activity with that group. So we actually used Cabernet Horizon's new community hub. They were, that was fairly new, so they had a meeting room, had a kitchen for refreshments. So it made for a great day where we were able to invite this group in, do an activity, have refreshments. They were then able to go use the charity shop, have a little wander about, maybe go for lunch. So it made a fantastic day out for people who had been very isolated for much of the last couple of years. And the activity we did was called Story Bowls. People brought along their own bowl, and I also asked them to bring along any little trinkets, something that meant something to them or something that was pretty. And basically I provided lots of foliage material, lichen, bark, and I'd bought some sphagnum moss, which I dried out. So we layered up the bowls with the sphagnum moss, the bark, the leaves, seed heads, things like that. And then they added their trinkets and things on top. And the idea really is that you can use this, it's used by Alzheimer groups as well as a way of generating conversations and memories. So some people did bring along things that meant something to them, you know, a kilt pin that had been handed down. There was a watch, a granddad's watch. There was a little flower buttonhole from somebody's wedding. So there were things that people could talk about, but other people just did it with Christmas decorations, or they particularly like butterflies, so they had lots of little butterflies. But it was nice the way that people were able to talk if they wanted to talk about their things, but otherwise they could just enjoy being in company. And the idea is you can take the bowl away, just give it a little spritz of water, and it keeps it looking quite fresh. And it really was a lovely activity to do. So I think that was a very enjoyable day. Hopefully we'll be able to do more of those one-offs as well as our tabletop gardening. Sorry, just I was wondering if I had another slide there, but I don't. So just to finish off, just wanted to mention another project that we're going ahead with this year, which is called Getting Together to Garden. And this is a project bringing us together with the local transport company, which is a community, a charitable organisation that provides local community transport. And the idea is that they will bring people to the gardens, whether it's in Aviemore at the new hospital or down in Kingussie at the old allotments, and we will provide the activity and the place for them to meet. And I think this is because we've identified that many people would like to join us. They don't get out, they don't have somebody that could bring them to the garden, but they would like to join us, but they don't have the transport. So this idea is that the two organisations together will be able to make sure that more people have access to social and horticultural therapy. And basically that's starting now and it's running all year. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully some of them will come regularly, but also some people might just come once or twice. You know, we'll just wait and see how it goes. But I think that's going to be a nice activity for a whole variety of people across the whole Strath. And I wanted to say that this is kind of typical of the different sorts of project that we take on each year. One of our founder members who's I think with us today, who might be able to speak more about this, the funding side of things, is Mary Stewart, and she's very good at finding funding opportunities and applying for them, and it's all such a lot of work to do these things. So there are so many people that work behind the scenes doing things like that, finding funding, things like policies and procedures, keeping abreast of current requirements, you know, things like COVID restrictions, you know, over the last year or so. Then there's also building the relationships with partner organisations, recruiting volunteers and supporting them, you know, so that they're happy with what they're doing and they're getting out of it what they want. Finding funding for specific projects, but also just for the basics of developing and maintaining the sites, that then sourcing seeds, plants, equipment that you need. All of that just takes so much work, and it's all volunteers that are doing that. And luckily we have some very experienced people that have, they've been doing it for a number of years. But it's important work, and we're very lucky really that we've got a good team that are doing all that work behind the scenes. And of course Trellis provide lots of support and information as well, and there are other organisations that we can turn to as well for specific help. But yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes just to try and keep all of this on the road. Okay, I think that's me just about finished. So I was hoping that we might be able to follow up with some questions and answers, and maybe some of the other people from the gardens would be able to answer some of the questions if it's relating to older activities, or the how things started and everything.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you.
That was terrific. Absolute cornucopia of ideas and projects and making community connections. A very vibrant gardening scene going on there. I'm just going to unspotlight if I can. Would you like to stop sharing your screen, Jen, and that way I'll help. Thank you. That's brilliant. Now, just going to go to speaker mode. So I believe, excuse me, that Mary Stewart and Ginty Moffat and Thelma may be here from the board. And I would ask them if they could unmute themselves just now so that they can take part in the discussion. And anyone else that's here from Badenoch and Strathspey, that would be really helpful. Thank you if you can do that. And I'm going to hand over to Joan now. She's going to moderate the questions.
Great. Hello. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. My scribbles are all over the place here because it was like so much information. It's brilliant. Thank you. Now, I see a couple of hands are already up, people wanting to ask things. So I'll get to you guys just shortly. We've got some lovely questions here for you. So I'll just crack on. First one up was from Cara. You mentioned, Jen, that the Highlands are good for growing fruits. Cara is wondering if you can give her a couple of recommended fruits and vegetables that take up minimum space, almost guarantee a successful crop, and are easy to manage with like a group of clients, patients that maybe find, some tasks a wee bit trickier. Your top 5, please.
Oh my goodness.
No pressure, no pressure.
And where do we know where Cara is?
Cara, would you like to unmute? Is Cara still with us? I'm assuming she's in the Highlands because we'll assume that she's in the Highlands. So if you can give us 3 or 4 your top tips.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Let me think. Well, I think strawberries definitely would be up there, just because they seem to grow well as long as you can protect them from the birds, and they're quite pretty as well. So if you've got limited space, I think they're a good quality plant to have. What else would I say for vegetables? Because some of my veg have not been the usual success last year. As I said, the courgettes last year weren't particularly good, but the previous year they had courgettes coming out their ear. So I'm going to say courgette as well, because that's usually a reliable crop. Even up here, I think potatoes in a bag is always it's quite a good activity to do. So again, if space is limited, putting the the new potatoes into a bag of compost, as long as you keep it watered, that's usually what sometimes causes a problem if they're not kept watered. And garlic was brilliant last year as well, because that's one that you can plant in the winter. and you know, it needs the cold and everything. So I think that was a nice crop because it's a bit different, and you know, you can use it in cooking and everything. It's one of those ones that people are familiar with, but they maybe haven't grown. So no, that would be my tips there. I don't know if anybody else from the garden would like to throw in anything else that's been good over the years.
I think Mary Stewart here. I think in the years when they have worked, the sweet peas, if you have them in a small area, you can grow them quite compactly, and obviously they, you know, with some sort of supportive structure, they can be grown in amongst the vegetables as well, to give a little bit of that, the perfume and the visual impact as well.
Great, thank you. Kate from Kilmarnock in East Ayrshire is in soggy East Ayrshire, and I'll say that because I'm in East Ayrshire as well. She's recommending parsnips, so perhaps if parsnips grow well down in our neck of the woods, they'll grow okay with you guys also. Now, the next kind of subject is weighty, let's say. Lots of people have been asking about this. It started off with Jenny, so I'm going to put a few questions to you at the one time, and then you can take a second or two to think about it, and maybe some that others might want to come in on it as well. It's to do with the planning and the designing of the new garden at the hospital. How did you actually get in at the planning stages with when the new hospital was being planned and designed? Did you get in at those initial stages so that the garden was an integral part of the design of the new build? And who funded the actual garden build? Who built it? Was it the NHS or was it separate funding? So if you can give us a wee bit of information in that, please.
I'll let Mary take that one on. She's behind.
Thank you, Jen. Yes, I was a member of the hospital planning team from the very outset. I was allowed to be included in that as part of the green spaces with NHS. So this goes back obviously several years. And just because keeping going, keeping mentioning it, there was examples of other hospitals that had gardens up in the Highlands, some had been more successful than others. So we just kept going, and then as things came to fruition, they actually allocated us, yes, as a part of the hospital grounds for our therapy garden. We had several members of the committee met with the construction people from the site, just about how it would go. I actually had drawn up plans myself of what we would have at the site and how it would be arranged. I've done the diploma in social and therapeutic horticulture, so as part of that I've done the design module for, you know, what should be included. So, and as a former occupational therapist, I have the background of what, you know, what we're trying to capture in the way of physical requirements too. So we had lots of meetings then also with the contractors who had agreed, and we had allocated some funding for the beds. However, the contractors agreed that they would actually build the beds for us as part of their contribution towards the site, part of their community engagement. So we agreed on sort of the final design and a shed and the greenhouse, and the beds were built as part of that commitment from them. Unfortunately, on the downside, our greenhouse, on the severe storms we had just a few weeks ago, our greenhouse, which I have to say maybe wasn't the strongest construction, has been decimated by the winds. So we're going to have to relook at what we do in the way of how we propagate our plants on the site.
Thanks.
Hopefully that covers some of how the background got there.
Thanks, Mary. I wonder if I could bring in Sally Mackenzie at this point. She's an ecologist in the planning department that was involved here. Sally, would you like to unmute and just give us your perspective on the hospital garden? Sally's there. Hello, Sally. Nope. Wait a minute till I zip down the list here and try and ask her to unmute and chat to us. She sent me a message earlier. I can't see her. Maybe she's had to go. Anyway, Sally was saying that the therapy gardens were really welcomed at the planning stage as part of the application, and she was one of the, maybe you know what this is, Mary, the CNPA planning.
That'd be the Cairngorms National Park.
Right, thank you. So Sally was part of that, and obviously it was important to their ecology of the national park that they were interested in your garden.
Yes, we had somebody from the national park who was probably involved in the part of the planning, particularly in relation to the outside of the hospital, what it looked like and how it fitted into the surroundings as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Joan. Oh, hello, Joan. I think Joan might have frozen. Oh, Joan's gone. She'll come back again. Perhaps we can take some of the questions that people were putting their hands up. Could you put your hands up again, please, and I will see the questioner and ask them to. There we go. Sorry, here's one. I'm trying to juggle my streams here. Julianne Henderson, please ask your question.
It's about the wildflower area that you've got. You said that it was a wet area that wasn't suitable for growing anything else. The community orchard that I run, more than half of it is just a great big bit of wasteland that was apparently designated for a wildflower area originally 8 years ago now. And I was told when I took it on and said I was going to have a go, I was told that it'd be too wet and that the wildflowers just wouldn't grow there. So I wanted to know what actual mix of wildflower seeds you used, because this is, I mean, there's nothing there but rubble. This bit is rubble and the tiniest bit of topsoil, and it's just screaming out to have, well, brambles and stuff planted in it, but wildflowers just to make it bonny.
Right, well, I'm afraid it isn't actually our plot. It's the Allotment Association that have that side. So I'm not sure. I don't know whether anybody else from our team knows what the mix was that they used. But it's one of these places where the water table is quite high, but they are still kind of like a raised bed almost. So I'm sure it won't be waterlogged all year. You know, so in the summer it probably does get quite dry, but no, I'm afraid I don't know what the mix was that they used. Does anybody else know anything about the mix that was originally put in there? Because I think it was put in about 3 years ago, and you know, it just keeps coming back. They rejuvenate it every year. But you know, I'm sure we'll be able to find out for you if that would be helpful, what mix they used. Because it is absolutely stunning.
I think it was. I think it was a commercial mix. It was one of the other allotmenteers that bought it and sowed it in. As Jen says, the water level can come up quite high. And we did have some fruit trees planted in, or the allotment site had planted some fruit trees in that. But after a couple of years where the water level had got so high and these plots had got flooded, they actually took the apple trees out, and this person decided to plant the wildflowers. So my understanding was it was a bought mix that was suitable, obviously, to grow in Scotland in this area. Okay. But I'm not sure what actually where it came from.
Okay.
Just to add to Julianne, Julianne, Scotia seeds are very good at advising as well as supplying seeds. So I think they would be the go-to.
Yeah, just what I thought. I thought, well, if they don't know, I'll just go straight to Scotia Seeds and tell them they'll give me what I need.
That's great. They're the experts. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Jo, do you have any further questions there?
Was that Jo or Joan?
Sorry. Oh, sorry, Joan, you're with us. That's marvellous.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry. It was Mary's chat of Storm Eunice. There was a pretty big gust came here, and my internet just went boom. So anyway, sorry. Apologies if I repeat something maybe now. The Cara also brought up building on the NHS interaction. Is the NHS, does Mary know, or someone else perhaps, ensuring that landscaping is being integrated into all new design and builds of hospitals, and are therapeutic agencies pushing for this design to be part and parcel of new build hospitals?
One of the people from the health side of NHS, he certainly has been involved in some of the new developments. I think there was the hospital up Golspie Way, and I think also around the new Portree Hospital. They're looking at, having some sort of green space and encouraging that. I think the evidence and the research base now is so strong about having green space and about how green space from your window can enhance your rehabilitation. I think it is going hand in hand. I think, the NHS and new builds are getting on board with that, especially with some of the other hospitals that are developing them and have developed them, like Nine Wells in Dundee.
Thank you. I think Joan's gone again. Jo, would you like to continue with the questions?
Yeah, no problem. Am I off mute now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, let's see where we got to. Anna asked, are you thinking of having a horticultural therapist work with you in the future? And if so, could you get funding for this?
I was the original project manager when it started, going back sort of 10 years, and I was a qualified horticultural therapist. Obviously the trellis training that Jen has undertaken has really trained her up, and along with her previous experience, it's getting that balance. But I would say she's almost, she is certainly a horticultural therapist, having gone through the trellis training and with her background. I think obviously it'll depend for the future, how much funding we have and what we're able to provide for our sessions and what we can afford for our sessions. But the idea is, yes, that a horticultural therapist gives us the best benefit across, all aspects of the project, definitely. Somebody did ask about whether we would be using the site for rehabilitation purposes. There is actually occupational therapist, I think, based at the hospital, and physiotherapist. And the hope is that they will be able to use that space for coming out, for encouraging patients to come out and be involved in the garden as well. It would offer the ideal opportunity. Across from the therapy garden is an open space with some benches on it, which is adjacent to the waiting room and the corridor to the hospital. So the hope is that the green space will integrate with the rehabilitation of the inpatients as well, where they can get out.
Great, thank you. There was another question about what you saw as potential obstacles for that happening, if there were any. I'm sure there are, though.
I suppose it's the time limit, and it's a small hospital. I think it's 24 beds. Obviously, emphasis is on rehabilitation. as to how how much time people can get out, and if you're rehabilitating people for getting home, the OT's emphasis might be on somebody's personal abilities and having the capacity to actually get out. But again, what the hope is, and again, I suppose some of this is around the COVID restrictions, is that people, visitors, would be able to take their relative out and actually use the green space there as well. It's, as I say, it's so nice to be just out in that space, right beside right beside the garden, right beside the therapy garden. And also the added attraction of the steam railway, which runs along the side of the hospital, for added interest for somebody to look at.
Thank you. I think we've maybe asked, I'm just going to scroll through quickly, but I think we've maybe asked all the questions that were in the chat. I don't know if anyone's wants to raise a hand or has other.
I think, can I just comment that I think Dan Jenkins possibly is in it, and Dan was certainly is from NHS Highland and was part of and could maybe comment further on the hospital and the new builds of NHS hospitals in this area.
That would be great. Yes, Dan has put a comment in the chat, but yeah, it would be great if Dan wants to unmute, if we can track him down. No. Dan, are you with us? You look like you're unmuted. No. No. Hopefully he'll maybe be able to join in. Nope. It's one of those technical mornings. One more question. I think it's a question. Therapeutic gardening is something I'm interested in doing as part of my career. Are there any courses or training you would recommend that could help me, please?
I would certainly, I would just say the general comment on it, because she's actually undertaken it, but the one that Trellis has been offering, which is something that could be undertaken at the same time as other work. And I'll let Jen comment further on that.
Yes, I mean, as I said, I started work with the Therapy Gardens in April of last year, so I was a little bit late joining the spring sort of series, but it was absolutely brilliant right from the start, because there's lots of information. There's some of it that's kind of optional, just to read up and give you background information, but there are exercises to do, little activities. You get lots of feedback, and it does give you so many ideas. Every time I do one of the courses, I get more ideas for things that I can do, and obviously it's in a seasonal setting, if you like, but a lot of the things you could use at any time of year, and it just gives you an introduction to all of the information that's with Trellis. But no, I found it really, really helpful, and it boosts your confidence as well when you're getting feedback on your assignments and things like that. It does make you think, oh yeah, I'm on the right track with this as well. So basically there's four different training packages for each of the seasons, and it's very, very straightforward. It's all online. Do it whenever you want, and it just ties in with the work that you're doing anyway. So there you are, and I'm not being paid for this publicity.
I was just going to say that. Let's know how much we owe you. Thank you very much indeed. That was a wonderful plug. Fiona, you've got your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, can I just add to that answer? So eloquently and generously put by Jen, she was talking about our seasonal activities courses, which are all packed full of ideas to use working with people with different health conditions or none at all, but who just want to enjoy the seasons and keep gardening year round. In addition to those, we are developing a practitioner course for anyone interested in working in this field, which will combine modules in horticulture with modules in health and care skills, and some therapeutic modules, therapeutic gardening modules that are our content that we've written. And we're trying to get that accredited at the moment. So we're working with a horticulture university college and a health college, and there is a question about your interest in this area in the survey. So we'll keep you posted on that, and we're hoping that that will be available in the next, well, I don't want to put a time scale on it, but we're hoping as soon as possible. And meanwhile, we also encourage people to develop their horticulture skills and training, and pick up skills on the health and care side, for example, mental health first aid training, active listening, counselling type skills, and those kinds of skills within the health and care side as well, because you're going to put those together. And then our training tries to do that, tries to blend the two fields, and we're trying to develop more CPD type events as well, so that we can help people stay up to date with their training. So that's enough for me. That's just an aside.
Well, thanks, Fiona. Dan, do you want to have another go? See if you can chat to us. Brilliant, brilliant. You're here.
Okay. It was just really to flesh out that certainly from an NHS perspective, certainly from the public health improvement team, the opportunities to have these kind of health improving projects actually kind of linked into kind of hospital spaces is something we're working hard to do a lot more of. There's an awful lot of space around NHS, frankly, be better used and better utilised, and we've been doing some specific work on a few sites, but certainly what works very well is where that really positive local partnership can be developed, so that groups like the Badenoch Strathspey Community Garden actually kind of providing the expertise and the capacity on the site, that hopefully then we can have a much stronger developed pathway then for kind of patients to be able to access those opportunities. That's something we're doing a particular work on at the moment, particularly in Badenoch and Strathspey. I've recently switched to my post, so I'm no longer the person who does the hospital green space stuff specifically. I've now got a secondment to the Cairngorms 2030 People and Nature Thriving Together programme, which is Heritage Horizons lottery funded for a 2-year development phase and a 5-year delivery phase. But one strand of it is particularly around the kind of public health outcomes, supporting people to connect with nature and the outdoors for the benefit of their health and well-being. And something that we know needs a lot of more kind of development and consistency is some of those pathways, both within community but also kind of from healthcare for people to be able to access those sorts of opportunities. So that's something we're going to be doing a lot of work on. There's some great examples and pilots from other parts of the country, elements of which we'll certainly be utilising and combining. Things like Dundee City Green Health Partnership have had a green health prescription scheme. The RSPB Nature Prescription Scheme recently evaluated in Edinburgh, as well as being run in Shetland. So there's bits and pieces of those projects that will hopefully be very transferable. But certainly, from my point of view, utilising the space we have, which is for me a public and community space at our NHS premises, is something that we should be focusing a lot more to do. I think certainly we've developed much stronger relationships in recent years between kind of public health and health improvement and the estates team, who are the people responsible for building new hospitals, and the relationship we have in terms of making more and more of that kind of health improvement opportunity of the hospitals, the buildings themselves, but also the space around them is certainly growing, and it fits very well together with the kind of health board's obligations under kind of climate conscious kind of net zero, and utilising those kind of green spaces as well. Edinburgh, Lothian have got a dedicated green space manager embedded in estates, and that's a very successful model because it actually has that capacity specifically dedicated within estates. But we certainly are working increasingly in partnership with our estates department. as well as with community organisations. So fingers crossed, that kind of combination between NHS and community and green space opportunities will be growing and growing, pardon the pun.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's good news, good to hear. There's a little comment in the chat, Dan. I don't know if you want to get back to Cara, but it's just to connect up and find out who a local contact would be. Maybe you can just reply to that.
Work on that one.
That would be lovely. Thank you. Jenny, I don't think we've got any more questions just now, unless we can spot anyone with a hand up or anything.
Any more for any more? Any more questions? No? If you do think of a question that you'd like to ask, because I'm sure you might when you leave the session, there's a chance to put questions into the survey. Just remember to add in your email address so that we can reply to you, and we'll either pass them on to Jen on the board to answer, or we'll do a bit of research for you and find out the answers. So thank you very much.